China's economy set to overtake US earlier due to COVID fallout. The Chinese economy is set to overtake the US faster than previously anticipated after weathering the coronavirus pandemic better than the West, according to the Center for Economics and Business Research. The world's biggest and second biggest economies are on course to trade places in dollar terms in 2028, 5 years earlier than expected a year ago, it said on Saturday. In its World Economic League table, the consultancy also calculated that China could become a high-income economy as soon as 2023. Further cementing Asia's growing might, India is set to move up the rankings to become the No. 3 economy at the end of the decade. Chinese President Xi Jinping said last month it was entirely possible for his economy to double in size by 2035 under his government's new 5-year plan, which aims to achieve modern socialism in 15 years. China was the first economy to suffer a pandemic blow, but has recovered swiftly, according to government data. That should prompt Western economies to pay much more attention to what is happening in Asia, according to the report. Typically, we compare ourselves with other Western economies and miss out on what often is best practice, especially in the rapidly growing economies in Asia, it said. Near China, we have Iran warning Israel not to cross Gulf red lines. Iran warned Israel on Monday not to cross its red lines in the Gulf in the final days of Donald Trump's presidency and following a reported Israeli submarine deployment. Foreign Ministry spokesman Saeed Khatibzadeh stressed the Islamic Republic would defend itself against any American military adventure in the run-up to the January 20 handover of power in Washington. The statement came a week after the U.S. Navy announced a nuclear submarine was being deployed to the Gulf, in a new show of force directed at Iran. Media in Israel have since reported that an Israeli submarine has crossed the Suez Canal also headed for the Gulf, a report that has not been officially confirmed or denied. Everyone knows what the Persian Gulf signifies for Iran, Khatibzadeh told an online news conference. Everyone knows the policies of Tehran regarding security and national security. Everyone knows very well how high the risk is raised if the red lines of Iran are crossed. Tehran accuses its regional foe Israel of responsibility for several anti-Iranian operations, including the assassination last month of nuclear scientist Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. The United States, for its part, has accused Iran of involvement in a rocket attack last week near its Baghdad embassy, as Tehran prepares to mark the first anniversary of the killing of top Iranian commander Qasem Soleimani in a U.S. drone strike in January. We have sent messages to the U.S. government and our friends in the region, warning the current U.S. regime not to embark on a new adventure in its final days at the White House, said Khatibzadeh. He said Iran was not seeking to increase tension and called for rational people in Washington to take the same line until President-elect Joe Biden replaces Trump in the White House. Decades-old tensions between Washington and Tehran have soared since 2018, when Trump unilaterally withdrew the United States from the Iran nuclear deal. The arch-enemies have twice come to the brink of war since June 2019, especially following the killing of Soleimani. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click the notification bell so you can get notified whenever new Bible prophecy news videos are uploaded. Scripture to consider. They have said, "Come, and let us cut them off from being a nation, that the name of Israel may be no more in remembrance. For they have consulted together with one consent, they are confederate against thee." Back to the news. Rockets, drones fly as Gaza terrorist groups hold joint military drill. Drill shows Gaza will soon have a regular army. The joint exercise held on Tuesday by several armed groups in the Gaza Strip shows that Palestinian factions in the Hamas-ruled enclave are seeking to establish a regular army, Palestinian sources said. According to the sources, the drill was the first joint military exercise launched by the armed wings of Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, and other local groups. The Gaza-based terror groups, Abu Hamza said, are ready to engage in any battle to defend our people and land. We won't allow the enemy to prey on our people and our weapons are ready, he added. The leadership of the occupation needs to realize that another adventure against our people will be met with full force and unity, accompanied by many surprises. The armed groups are today stronger and more capable of confronting and deterring the enemy. We won't allow the enemy to impose rules of engagement on us. He also strongly condemned the recent normalization agreements between Israel and some Arab countries, saying, "Those who establish relations with the occupation will end up in the dustbin of history." Ismail Radwan, a senior Hamas official, said the drill was aimed at sending a message to Israel not to launch another military strike on the Gaza Strip. Addressing the Arab countries that reached normalization agreements with Israel, the Hamas official said, "Despite your normalization, the difficult situation and the siege imposed on the Gaza Strip, we are on the path of liberation and martyrdom." Scripture to consider. "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week, and in the midst of the week he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease, and for the overspreading of abominations he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate. He is the prince that shall come to confirm a covenant with many, including Israel, to start the 70th week spoken of by Daniel the prophet." Lastly, Saudi Arabia-Israel normalization deal estimated within 1 year. Confronted with the assertions, the foreign ministry had no official comment. There are expectations among some of Israel's highest echelons that there will be normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia by the end of 2021, the Jerusalem Post has learned. There is high confidence among some that normalization will not come before the Trump administration exits nor in the early stages of the Biden administration, but certain trends will have some momentum within 12 months. The assertions come following a series of sometimes complimentary and sometimes seemingly contradictory statements by top Israeli officials in recent months as the normalization trend lurched forward. Confronted with the assertions, the foreign ministry had no official comment. Last week, Intelligence Minister Eli Cohen said a deal could come with the Saudis in the next few years but not before January 20th, nor did he publicly specify that it would come by the end of 2021. This came following Cohen's statement on November 2 that a deal with the Saudis could be close, though he qualified his prediction in light of uncertainty at the time as to who would win the U.S. election and future Iran policy. On November 23, it was widely reported that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had recently met with Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, MBS, as part of a joint visit to the key Sunni country along with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. A flood of confirmations and denials, Netanyahu himself publicly refused to comment, appeared to indicate that the visit had happened and was viewed as a sign of relations moving forward, but it was supposed to have been kept secret. Incidentally, the Post has learned before that MBS has previously secretly visited Israel. On October 25, Channel 12 reported that Mossad director Yossi Cohen had privately said to those around him that the Saudis were waiting until after the U.S. election, but they could potentially announce normalization as a gift to the winner. The implication from the report was that such an announcement could even come almost immediately after the election. However, it was reported in these pages later on October 25 that the Channel 12 report either misunderstood or did not fully flesh out what the Mossad director had said. In actuality, Cohen's comments in closed conversations in October had been more nuanced. Speaking a week before the U.S. election, the Post learned that the spymaster had said if U.S. President Donald Trump won, there could be an almost immediate announcement. While the polls correctly predicted a now President-elect Joe Biden election win, although the Saudis would still want a normalization deal with Israel, there would not necessarily be a clear timeline. Cohen had emphasized that the Saudis did not want to give a gift to Trump and then get nothing for it upon a Biden administration taking over the reins. Rather, Cohen understood then that a Biden administration may want to link normalization with the Saudis to progress in negotiations with the Palestinians. This was the opposite tactic of the Trump administration. It tried to pressure the Palestinians to show flexibility in negotiations with Israel by moving forward with normalization deals without them. What is interesting about the latest information mentioned here is that now, almost 2 months after the U.S. election, there is once again higher confidence that there will be a deal with the Saudis by the end of 2021. Before U.S. Election Day on November 3, there was far more uncertainty from both Intelligence Minister Eli Cohen and Mossad Director Yossi Cohen about how the Saudis would conduct themselves with Biden. But now there are top officials who are indicating greater confidence about the issue. Though some of this impression could arise from informal signals sent between Israeli officials and Biden transition figures, some of the confidence may come from a renewed understanding of the Saudis' intentions regardless of how they are treated by the incoming administration. Mossad chief Cohen first suggested the possibility of official ties with the Saudis in a rare on-record interview with Channel 12 in mid-September, and he has been secretly visiting there for years. Former IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant Gen. Gadi Eisenkot in 2017 publicly announced that Israel was sharing intelligence with the Saudis as the countries grew closer. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And stay tuned to Watchman Report for more Bible prophecy news.